problem, Georgie here with you, aka VHS82 apostrophe, with what we're looking at, I guess, is episode 18. And as you see behind me in the title, Zombie 5, Killing Birds. I have an idea, and I think I'm going to run with this, but if you like it, drop a comment below if this is something that you definitely would like to see in order. But I'm seriously giving some real thought to, once we've covered Zombie 5, right, Killing Birds. I have such a love for this franchise. We'll go backwards, right, for After Death, and then, you know, Zombie 3, right, the one that, unfortunately, too bad, Fulci. This couldn't have been Fulci's great return into the franchise of what maybe could have been. And then, of course, in a few weeks down the road, end at the absolute classic, which is a film which we, you know, bookend with Michele Soavi's film from 79 to 94 in terms of all the movies that we're really spotlighting in that golden era of Italian cinema. And so that is, I think that is the plan. So start with Zombie 5. Claudio Lattanzi does get directing credit on this, although everyone from what I've read says probably Joe D'Amato, who served as cinematographer on this, probably was the director. Lattanzi was inexperienced and seen by some, I think, around as not ready to handle a full film. Now, there was apparently an original script which Lattanzi, I think, was responsible for, which is a lot of really a different movie than what we ultimately get here with Killing Birds. But that being said, D'Amato probably pretty much sat in the director's chair, I would imagine, although he does give Lattanzi director credit. Joe D'Amato, of course, you would know him from Anthropophagus, maybe more importantly, for our purposes here, he's responsible for Filmirage company, which put out not only this, of course, my most beloved slasher of all time, Stage Fright, which Michele Soavi got his directing debut in. And it was a company that really the purpose for Joe D'Amato was to bring young guys like Claudio Lattanzi on to sort of get their, you know, their teeth broken, I guess, in a good way. I'm trying to think of the right phrase to that. So yeah, so did Lattanzi really direct this? Probably not. Probably Joe D'Amato. And so anyways, Goldberg, who's the writer, one of the principal writers on the newly revamped script, also was in charge of the dialogue for Stage Fright. So I thought, and the screenplay, Jason, get ready for this. Body Count, that Ruggero Deodato film, which is pretty interesting. Robert Gould, one of the guys who has his hands on the special effects in here, also, of course, worked on Stage Fright, which is, again, a very beloved film for me. This is a Filmirage production again, and look, you know, my love for these movies, man, as far as I'm concerned, this franchise is limited in scope, unofficially, officially, however you want to paint it, to these films. This is, you know, for better or worse, this is your zombie franchise, right? And I remember, you know, renting or seeing these. I remember there was a point where they must have been on VHS. I have to imagine they were on VHS. But there was a point where I remember seeing these movies. You know, I always methodically, when I'm movie hunting out in the wild, I'll start, you know, at the very beginning of the shelf and work my way down, all the way down across. And always seeing a movie, or this particular one, this cover, and always just being intrigued by this. But for whatever reason, I never picked it up. And I can't even remember if I rented it early way back. But I've always had a heart. Now, Robert Vaughn, of course, is in this too, and we'll get into the story here real quick. But going back to Lucio Fulci's original masterpiece, Zombie, and then, of course, all the way through, this is a franchise that I want to say of late has really grown on my heart in terms of just the fullness and the scope of it. And I get it, man. It's a bit scatterbrained from where it begins in 79, and unfortunately, where Zombie 3 ultimately attempts to pick up, but then Fulci grows sick and moves on, and then you got Fragasso and, oh, help me, is it Matai maybe? Two guys work. I know Fragasso is a big one, working on that, and then of course, I think Fragasso takes over 4, and then you've got Lattanzi here, right? At least getting credit for this, and so, God, I would love to be part of a podcast that talked about every one of these movies. It would be fantastic. I absolutely just get a kick. And so I rewatched this the other night. Basically, the basic idea is you get a group of kids led by Laura Wendel, who plays Anna, our lead girl. And her friends now, of course, Robert Vaughn plays one Dr. Fred Brown. And initially you have your setup scene here where this guy comes back from Vietnam, and of course this is all shot down in Louisiana, and I'm kind of, whether it's the, I've lived in Louisiana for a little bit before, it is hot, and this film looks like it was hot. It looks like these poor kids were constantly never-ending sweat, man, and just being drained and fatigued. I know what this place is like, man. I lived there for a little bit when I was in the Army. I was stationed at Fort Polk, and it was just miserable, absolutely miserable. Probably enhanced by putting that little layer of Vaseline on the lens. And then you've just got some really interesting ambiance with this movie. But this guy, man, we first see him getting off this semi-truck. He's been hitchhiking. Apparently, he's back from Vietnam. He's coming home and reuniting with his, whether she is his wife or just he wants her to be his wife. I think she already is. He comes in and basically finds her sleeping with another guy. She has no idea he's going to be home. And he just snaps. I mean, he ends up killing the guy in the bed, cutting his throat. He ultimately kills her. I assume it's her parents who have had the baby, babysitting. They come back to bring the baby back. They have no idea what's going on. They walk right into this, and he unloads on them, kills them both. And now he is, we learned that he was a bird collector of rare species of birds. And so there's birds all over the place, man, hence killing birds, right? And, which is a loosely fitting title, considering you probably, this is some sort of variant of, loose variant of the zombie world, but ghost house, some earlier nods, I'm sure, to other Italian films. But once he's done this, the birds, he ends up in the process killing one of his birds. Well, they take great exception and ultimately end up attacking him, ripping his eyes out and causing him to go blind. So we ultimately see him being taken off, and we don't know exactly if he was blamed or not blamed for this. But then, so we jump out ahead years later, and you get this group of kids. They're in college. This guy, he's just got a grant to study rare exotic birds out in the wild. This certain type of wood or some kind of woodpecker, and so they're all going to go out kind of together, and they go do this research study, field study, and so of course they first. We'll find the Robert Vaughn character, who's one of 3 who has seen this one particular bird. Of course, they're unaware of his history. They suspect there is a history, but they're unaware of the history, right? And so we get some really interesting Robert Vaughn stuff, but then some stuff that just makes no sense, and you kind of just trying to pull things together here, and in terms of 1 minute we're with the kids out there and things are just starting to go from bad to worse, and then suddenly we're back with him and you don't know what's going on exactly. Is he being compelled? Is he sort of feel tremors in the forest and he's being drawn back to this place, and he knows these kids have probably stumbled upon his old home where he's committed these murders. And I think we ultimately find a house which these kids will eventually, in their field study, they will find themselves in this abandoned house where these murders took place, right? Robert Vaughn's character, right? And this house cannot rest and will not rest until it sees justice fully served, which is, and why these birds just didn't kill him. That might be the one thing that makes the least amount of sense in this entire movie. And there's a lot of things that probably don't make a lot of sense. But the birds should have just had their justice at the moment when they had them. They had them right there, and they just let them go. And then, unfortunately, these kids wander into the pathway of a house that is attemptingly trying to call this guy back so they can renew their bid for justice, I guess. These birds aren't happy that he took one or two of them out, I guess. And the house just seems not, the murders committed there. This house will not rest until things are, I guess, just in its own right. And so it's, maybe I'm making more sense out of this mess than most people ever see. But in revisiting this the other night, I got maybe the biggest kick out of this movie, the most satisfaction I've got on this movie, I think, ever. And I just enjoyed, man. I enjoyed just the ambiance of this house out in the Louisiana territory, just just knowing how hot it is and how miserable as actresses had to have been. Just seeing this house take on just some weird ambiance in terms of just, it's kind of like Ghost House, if you've seen that Italian feature. It just starts messing with these guys in a Ghost House-like way. And it's, this could have been a haunted house sort of in its own right. It didn't have to have the name Zombie 5 Killing Birds on it, although the cover makes it feel like it does belong. Ultimately, enough blood is shed and enough havoc ensues that Robert Vaughn's character is somehow, I don't know how he gets from, he's blind, I don't know how he gets from his house to this place. Somebody must bring him. And but he does show up sort of like in this, I don't know, like he's going to conduct some main exorcist or something, but he shows up and he's like, oh, wow, the two that survived, thank you. You can go now. You're free. This is all about me. Let me take the rest of the brunt. Well, thank you for not coming earlier when all these others, were, killed in some pretty creative ways, man. It's one guy's chain. There goes my backdrop. Into a generator. And, of course, he gets choked to death. And there are some interesting effects here, although the effects, because of money, probably weren't carried out to their logical end. You got one where a zombie has his hand on the one girl's head as they're trying to get away in the vehicle, and he almost literally rips the head right off. And so there's like some interesting special effects sequences, and the really ones that could have been great probably aren't seen all the way through, probably because of money or whatever. And then ultimately, the end as it plays itself out, with Robert Vaughn's character, sort of a lot of it's left here imagination in terms of exactly what is happening to him. You can imagine what is happening to him, but again, there's just no way they're going to pull that off with the birds, I guess. It was interesting. I really, like I said, I had a really big blast with it the other night, and just really enjoyed this thing too. I love all these movies, man. Of course, none is greater than the first, right? There was also, D'Amato, being cinematographer and probably also being the director. He does steal a scene from his own Anthropophagus at the end. There's 3 of them left, and of course, they're up in the attic of the house, and they think they're safe for the moment. They're both, and it's a great amount of tension that just sort of, it just goes slow, and you just know, man, if you've seen Anthropophagus, you know what's coming. You just you steal from your own movie, buddy. Sure enough, man, this hand comes right down through the roof and grabs the one poor kid and just starts to haul him up through the hole. And of course, they try to pull him down to no avail. And so it's the 2 in the end. And ultimately, they're able to, I'm pretty sure if I remember right, they're able to get out of there at the end because Robert Vaughn shows up just in time to take the brunt of what this house and with these birds and just, I think, just the scar that's left on this house needs to be remedied. And so, however the directing assignments went down, ultimately in the end, and Lara Wendel, I'm pretty sure, she was in both Ghost House and Tenebrae, which is interesting. And I want to say Robert Vaughn, of course, we know him from The Man from Uncle and from that old movie Hangar 18, which is interesting. So anyways, I think I'm just going to close it out here. It's definitely, if you've never seen it, I got this on the cheap. But Vinegar Syndrome's put out a great release of this, which I don't have, but it definitely is on my list at some point, because there is a film historian commentary on there that I really want bad to hear from what I've read. And so anyways, Vinegar Syndrome, and it's too late to get it now if you don't have it, but I have to say, I watched this on 4K last night, and this was absolutely mind-bendingly freaking awesome. The sound, just the picture, but the sound, man. God, Cauldron put this out on 4K, and this was absolutely amazing to watch last night. So anyways, we'll leave it there, right? We'll leave it there. And so if you like the idea of just running through the whole zombie franchise, encourage me. Drop a comment, hit the like, sub if you haven't subbed, and keep checking it out, man, every other week. As always, go Bills.
This is not a dream, not